那我当时想的是，就是说 British 的 change view of Ireland in comparison with China 的 change view of Taiwan。那当然就是说，我们知道中国并没有怎么 change 它的 view of Taiwan，right？ 然后可是就是透过这样的对话，中国是不是可能去 change？ 他一直在跟台湾谈的时候，他不会 change， 因为他是大国。对，然后他现在要变成一个 new power， 他是不是会跟旧的 power， 然后那个英国去学？对，然后尤其是对台湾，我们一直在谈这个两岸的关系，一直在跟可能就是同治你的人在那边对谈。对，那我们是不是换个角度去跟一个同样就是就人的处境？你刚才也提出来是一个小岛。然后他面对一个大国的时候，然后他有一个很复杂的历史，很复杂的认同，对，然后是不是跟这样就是同样的就爱尔兰人，然后对在相似的处境那样的人来对话这样的一个经验，然后是不是可以帮助我们有新的想法或新的空间？
Sort of on and off, I've been thinking about Ireland and looking at what's written about Ireland as a way of reconfiguring some of the questions about Taiwan. And then more recently, I can't remember what the catalyst was, I started looking at Irish studies in a bit more detail. And if you start to look at Irish studies, you realise that it punches fantastically far above its weight. Ireland's population is about 1/5 of Taiwan's, and yet that's the resident population. There are about 80 million people worldwide, on the other hand, who trace a sort of Irish connection. And Irish studies, whether as a package or as an interest that's unravelled as a package, is evident in so many places around the world. I've been trying to read articles from the Nordic Journal of Irish Studies, the Japanese Journal of Irish Studies, the Canadian Journal of Irish Studies. Irish Studies is something that happens in China now. It's something that is obviously beginning to be interesting in Ireland.
Imagine.
Sorry, in Taiwan. Taiwan, sorry. Let's see. But just the scale of it got me wondering, why is it that Irish studies is so prevalent and Taiwan studies isn't? But that's not really a matter of negative for Taiwan. It's trying to account for why Irish studies are so big, because nobody seems to do Scottish studies or Welsh studies.
Do you think it has
or Canadian studies?
Yeah.
Whatever. So what is it about Irish studies, and what can we learn about it? And I don't have ready answers to it, but I see comparison not as being systematic, but just cherry picking in some ways. It's not, and it might be said that comparing Ireland and Irish studies and Taiwan studies is comparing apples and oranges. But I think it's actually very useful to compare apples and oranges, because you're looking at the differences. You're trying to find areas of commonality. You're trying to find areas of absence. You're trying to look at questions that are asked in one place and not asked in the other place. And I think that's very fruitful to generate questions, not necessarily to come up with a systematic book or article that blow by blow makes a comparison, but just to be a catalyst for questions.
As a journalist, it is quite often the case that I take a superficial approach to any phenomena, whether it be Guanhoyin, whether it be Jinxiang Bodong, whether it be Inling, whether it be any of these sort of rituals that are common in Taiwan. I've never had the opportunity to actually go in depth. And I think that that's the primary reason why I would like to focus in on something like Taiwan's popular religion, because I've written enough about it that I have a rudimentary familiarity with it. The reason why I focused in on Dajia as a comparison to a pilgrimage in Ireland, which is of course in Knock, is because I think that there are comparisons that reveal differences and similarities between these kinds of phenomena. More particularly the charismatic nature of the leaders of the, for example, 大家, Zhenlan-Gong's Yan Qingdiao, and Monsignor Haran in Knock. And so now the paper will primarily focus on Yan Qingdiao because that's, and the pilgrimage itself, because that's what I have the most familiarity with and I can get the most resources on. And the focus is essentially going to be on how Yan Qingdiao uses his charisma to perpetuate his power on the local, regional, and national level, and more recently on the international stage with Daijia going to Meizhou in China.